almost right next door, and that's the old First Baptist parsonage, and beautiful home that she redid. It did a lot of damage there, and then it went on down, headed on down West College Street, and that's where it hit some houses.
The Spans and
the Dennisons first, though. It hit Dennisons, and then knocked across, bounced across, and hit the Spans. The Spans' old antebellum home, and that tower where back in the old days when you lived on the river, they would walk up to the tower to watch the boats come in. Well, that was what that was for, but it wasn't right there on the water. But that was blown completely down. And our good friend that we love so much, Jim O'Neill, hopefully he's watching this morning, he was sitting at his breakfast room table reading the paper and eating cereal or oatmeal, and the storm knocked off that big tower right before you got to his house, which is the old Henderson house, the old antebellum houses with the fancy roof and all that. Thank the Lord, no real damage at his house, but then next door, the Wheaton house, which was his sister's house, the Wheaton house was Charles Henson's sister's, who that house was renovated by Sister Schubert, and later bought by
the Bakers,
Miss Campbell Baker. And they had quite a bit of damage in their backyard. They were doing a lot of renovation back there. But the one that was hit real hard, which is right next door to him, was John
and Pam Little.
John and Pam Little, who live in one of the most beautiful homes in Troy, probably the oldest home in Troy, I would say.
I've always heard that.
So it hit there. Then it bounced over the Murphy house next door, the old Murphy house, and the cemetery. Then it slides down there and knocks off, that's not a very good way to put it, but that's what happened. The old Mary Chevrolet building where OCAP is.
Yeah, the aluminum roof.
It missed the brand new Dollar General. That's a giant Dollar General coming there that's just built. It could have very easily.
Right when they built it,
but it bounced, as we said, it bounced over on your place where me and you both grew up, Murphy Park. Knocked down a few trees. Then it hits my buddies at Town and Country Flooring, and then right next door to Town and Country Flooring was the auto parts place, and it really banged it up real bad. And then it takes off and heads out over East Troy, North Troy.
Mayor Reeves say that it damaged another church outside of town?
Sure. I'm sure it did. That as it went on,
Or went by Knox? Did it go by the Knox Street fields?
It could have, and I don't know how far it went. But all of this happened.
Piggly Wiggly had a little leak, I think.
That's right, and also up North 39th Street. But it bounced around. Thank goodness it didn't do what a lot like the one recently over at Beauregard. It stayed on the ground such a long time. This one sort of just bounced around and so forth.
It seemed like it was a small tornado and it bounced around.
Yeah.
So it was.
And we're very, very.
A lot of
very
people.
fortunate.
I think I had no idea that 2,500 people were without power for up to 5 hours.
And the city of Troy, though, was Johnny on the spot. We were lucky to have the mayor call us in yesterday and talked about what a great
job. I've always admired these line utility crew workers that can get the power back on as fast as they can.
Which was very important, no question about it. We're, of course, want to mention Circle Insurance in Ozark today, and Sam Judah and all the great folks there. Dixieland Dental, located 9 miles north of Dothan on Highway 231. Dr. Michael Precise, Dr. John Strength, Dr. Damon Strength, and Dr. Robert Precise make up one of the largest dental clinics in Alabama. With 4 guys the other day, we were out at went to a reception out at the Marriott, and everybody said, I'm hungry. And this one guy said, let's go to Preston's. Not just like that, but we said, that sounds good because, Preston's has a great steak. I'm not exaggerating. When we got out there, these are three of these were coaches in Mississippi, and the other one was my good buddy Rodney Jordan, who used to coach here at Troy from Goshen.
What's he doing now?
Coach that you follow.
Boy, he was a great
Oh,
lineman.
he was, yeah, great guy too. No question. So we went to Preston's, and there was Preston, and I said, Preston, tell us what we need to order. He said, well, I just ordered some steaks, and they sent me the wrong ones. What they did, they sent me some big porterhouse steaks. And sure enough, yeah, porterhouse has the big T-bone in it, you know, and it has the filet on one side, like a T-bone, and then it's got the strip on the other side. Well, they were that thick, about 1.5 inches thick. These were huge steaks. They were 1.5 inches thick, and so all of us ordered one. There were 5 of us, and all of us ordered those huge steaks. And like I said, they were 1.5 inches thick, and they were wonderful. And I ate, and I ate, and I ate. And I said, well, a couple of those guys finished theirs, but no way in the world could I have eaten that whole steak. So I ate it again yesterday. Took some of it home with me, but Preston's has big time steaks.
Well, I'm heading out there and getting me one.
And you tell him you want it thick, he'll cut it thick. That's what I like. You say, hey, I want a thick steak, and they'll bring you one. And it is a great place to eat a steak, and we appreciate him so much.
Well, Troy has some great places to eat.
Yeah.
And Pike County has some great places to eat.
Now, we got several things coming up. Of course, T-Day game is at 11 o'clock kickoff this Saturday afternoon at the stadium. And then, of course, baseball coming back to town. Troy's baseball team playing very well. They won their 3rd series on the road the other day, and they're starting to play real good. So they'll be playing at 2 o'clock on
here in town.
Well, they'll play at 6 o'clock on Friday, 2 o'clock on Saturday, and 2 o'clock
Well,
again on
there's a lot
Sunday.
going on out at
No question about
college.
it. And then last night, if you would have listened closely, and I did, they had the Miracle League opening day. You know, that's something that Troy has that very few towns have. Is this a place where kids with handicaps can play baseball, and they had a great group out there last night, and the Troy team was all out there in full uniform, and they worked with these kids, and I heard all this excitement and music, and it was just wonderful. Goshen knocked off Pike County 14-3. Logan Boyce was the pitcher for Goshen. Goshen's girls also knocked off Zion Chapel, and JV Patriots Pike Liberal finished 2nd at the state this week. So congratulations.
And what?
Well, in varsity baseball, they won 3 games on Saturday to advance to the state final. The Patriots began the day with a 5-1 win over Glenwood. These are the junior varsity kids. These are 7th, 8th, and 9th grade kids. And then they picked up a 12-2 win over Escambia, a 12-8 win over Lee Scott in the losers bracket final to send them to a championship. And at the championship, they came up short. They lost to Edgewood 12-1. But real good baseball.
2nd in the state.
But now let me tell you the secret to a lot of this. The Patriots' first game against the Gators of Glenwood, who are always good. Drew Nelson pitched. Drew Nelson is this great young pitcher that started as an 8th grader last year in the state championship, which Pike Liberal Arts won last year in the 3A state championship. And another kid named Bradford, K.C. Bradford, and Skylar Kidd. All these kids played in the rec program.
So I wasn't here last year. Pike Liberal Arts won the state championship in baseball last year?
In 3A, they won it. We went and did the game live in Tuscaloosa. I spent 2 nights up there in Tuscaloosa by way of Troy Cable. We did the games live. And then when they went to the championship game at Patterson Field, we were there live too. It's amazing on Facebook, and I tell people all the time, ladies and gentlemen, that on Facebook we could go out to 2 billion people. There are over 2 billion people that are on Facebook, but
hello, Facebook.
By us going live, we can be seen.
I want to put in a plug for Troy Cable. Having lived in many other towns besides Troy now, nobody else has a local cable company that covers all these local events and sporting events. We're so spoiled in Pike County and now the other communities that get Troy cable to have, somebody that'll send these camera crews and announcing crews to record these games where I guess you can watch them live, but even if you can't watch them live, you can enjoy them the rest of your lives.
Exactly right. You probably watching some yourself. What years were you at high school?
Well, no, I wish we did not have bogey vision.
We started in the mid '80s.
For that state championship year, there was no bogey vision, but I did start watching. My little brother graduated from Charles Henderson in 1986. His games were.
You know who had the idea for all this, don't you? Do you know who that was?
You?
Yeah, yeah. That of course, it had to be implemented, and no question about it. My very good friend.
I wonder how many events, if you could count sometimes the number of events, not just high school football games, but cheerleader performances, volleyball games,
unreal.
Recitals, parades. I guess Steve could count them, but it's just thousands and thousands and thousands of programs that are
no question about
saved forever. And then I guess they were on videotape for a long time, but you can transfer those things.
Sure, you sure can. And they're doing a lot of that around here now. I want to mention, of course, it all started with Harold Freeman, the owner and operator. And, he was going up against the big guys, He had two other big cable companies here in town. And when we started doing local stuff, the old saying about where Pike County watches itself, it just got bigger, this program, and ended up buying both them out, or actually they closed up. So,
my two cents is it was that decision that more than anything that, probably great channels and low cost too, but covering the local events separated Troy Cable from the big guys, and now Troy Cable's becoming the big guy.
Well, in Montgomery, you lived out at
Heritage Ridge and Pike Road.
Pike Road, what I was fixing to say, and that little town has grown. It's like they just built a little city out there. Isn't that right?
Well, Pike Road is bizarre. I mean, if you looked at it on a map, I mean, there's little sections that are in Pike Road and not, and
you're right.
But it is one of the fastest growing communities in the state of Alabama, if not the fastest.
And one of my very good friends, I've known him for years, and is the mayor, and just like the mayor of Andalusia, we'll have to. We might go up Pike Road one day, maybe do one of the shows live, and maybe go to Andalusia. These are all great little towns that were built by vision. You know what I'm saying? Vision. Would you say that the mayor of Pike Road has had a great deal of vision?
He did. He certainly did. And I can remember Pike Road was the shortcut to I-85 in Atlanta and Auburn. Everybody in Troy knew it, or going to the lake, Lake Martin. And it was cow pastures. What a pretty little road. But now my neighborhood, Heritage Ridge, I moved in there 7 years ago, and it was already built up then. Across the street from our house, there was one house, and then we had a dead end. The area across the street from my house now has probably about 50 houses, where the dead end is now about 15 roads and probably 300, 400
and then
houses.
It's got an area called the Waters, which a lot of people don't see. You got to know how to get there, and you got to want to go there. And it is beautiful, a great place to live, and all of that is all in. If you look at the square footage of that community, it goes a lot of miles. It's probably square footage bigger than Montgomery. Is that right?
I did I was
city limits.
The editor of the Montgomery Independent for about 7 or 8 years.
And I love that paper. I read it almost every week.
And when I was at the Independent, I did a big story on the Waters when they started it, and so I've seen the plans and got to interview the owners. It's the second, as usually is the case, it's the second owners that do good with a project. The first owners often go bankrupt doing it. The second owners make a killing. Yeah. But there are phases on top of phases that they have
What has
planned.
been the key? What's been the key to that? Of course, a great mayor. Of course, he came out of Pineapple, Alabama. Did you know that? And Pine Hill, the
Well,
mayor.
the Waters is, to me, it's like seaside in a rustic, rural setting is their idea. But what's driving everything is the terrible reputation public schools in Montgomery have.
You know, isn't it amazing that very few people that we know send their kids to public schools in Montgomery? It's not.
If you can get in one of the magnet
the magnet
schools
program,
are fantastic, with some of the best in America.
Sure.
But they're competitive, and if you can't get in there, you're probably not going to go to Montgomery Public Schools. Now, Montgomery does have some outstanding private schools.
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
more per capita than any city I know of.
Yeah.
Trinity, St. James, Montgomery Academy, Catholic. Those are all fine schools.
And it's not, you know, and we're not knocking any teachers or anybody else. It's just, most of Montgomery, if you'll think about it, is moving out of the city limits, of Montgomery. And of course, there's still a lot of them that been there, but it's just the growth of Montgomery has a lot to do with it. Of course, a lot of people now live in Wetumpka area, live in the Prattville area.
You know, they live in Prattville and Wetumpka and Millbrook, and as we've talked about, a
lot
lot
of traffic in the
a lot of
mornings.
people live in Auburn, and
Yeah.
I've often argued that Troy could market itself as a bedroom community of Montgomery now. I mean, why the drive from North Troy to Pike Road in Montgomery takes as short a time as the drive from Auburn, and given traffic on some days, the drive from Millbrook, and you could still work in Montgomery, and you could live in a small town with a great quality of life with a Division I college.
No question about it.
I don't know a whole lot of people
Let
that
me
are-
just say this: I worked up there for 30 years almost, and I drove every day. And hey, it wasn't any problem with me. I enjoyed it.
I'll tell you one thing about Pike Road that a lot of people don't know. The school system's different and controversial. I wrote about it, but there are, I think, 5 students at Charles Henderson High School that live in Pike Road. They commute every day to come to school in Troy.
And then at the same time, there's a lot of the kids that used to commute. I remember 2 or 3 families used to drive to Montgomery Academy, where their kids went to school for a while. No question about it. I want to mention something, Bill. Of course, appreciate Bill being on our show today. One of the greatest structures of all time, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, burned, I reckon, completely down.
No, I don't think it burned
Did it
completely.
save money?
The main structure, I think, or edifice is they think they can save it, but a lot of it.
Yeah.
And the part you see from the skyline is.
And the roof, of course, the whole roof, but the you've been there for what is?
No.
Well, I have. It is a magnificent structure with beautiful stained glass and all that. And you look up there, you say, how in the world did they get up there to do that? But it was one of the most beautiful structures of all time, and it is really that was a terrible.
I wonder
fire,
how it started.
especially right here at Easter. It is one of the most focal places at Easter, probably in the country. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it's so sad.
And it was how 800 years old.
Over 800 years old, which
That is pretty old.
Columbus
isn't it?
sailed to the Americas in 1492, so this Notre Dame Cathedral was built 250, 300 years before Columbus even sailed to America.
Yeah, and if you think America is, let's see,
So
250 years old,
Yeah.
and Notre Dame was built about 500 years before that. So, and of course, the people in Paris, don't you know, this was one of the most visited places in the world, right here in Paris, France. And I would have thought you would have been abroad.
You know, I've got a lot of places to go on my bucket list.
yeah,
I've been
exactly.
to, Dad took me to Switzerland in the last years of his
Yeah.
life.
Now, I
So
remember he liked to travel, didn't he?
my mom and dad went all over the world. So
Yeah.
they did it right.
Of course, the son of the great Bill Rice Sr., and of course, your dad was on this show, not, but just really a day, maybe a day before he actually died. But what an attitude though he had. Yeah, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid. Was he? He lived a great life, like you said. He lived a full life.
He was an American original, that's for sure.
And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I want to mention a big weekend coming up next weekend is Troy Fest, and which is, I used to say the biggest day of the year in Troy was homecoming and the homecoming parade and appreciation day, which is a huge day. But Troy Fest, though, over a 2-day period, is a fabulous weekend. If you don't love Troy now, you won't ever love Troy after you go to Troy Fest. It is wonderful.
I love it. I love what's happening downtown. We've got some revitalization occurring. And yesterday, I went and filed my extension for my taxes.
Did you?
At H&R Block. I was right across the street from the old Troy Citizen building, which is the building next to the old library that has the mural on the side of the building. I said, well, I'm going to walk in there and see what it looks like. It had been a orthodontist office for Kim Thomas.
Have they moved out now?
Yeah, and now it's Blue Key Real Estate Company has just gone in there. And I couldn't believe how nice it was, and the it looks nothing like the old.
She still has a practice though in Troy, doesn't she?
She might.
She did braces and things like that. Of course, her dad was my dentist for years, Dr. Thomas. But something that we just sort of take for granted, the beautiful structures. But if you take a look at our First Methodist Church and our First Baptist Church, and then our a church on West College Street, the
Episcopal Church,
Episcopal Church.
Mark's.
Those are 3 of the most beautiful structures you'll find in any town. I mean, the beautiful stained glass. They ought to open them up for tourists to see how beautifully structured they are.
The churches can really beautify any town, and then a certain signature buildings in the downtown area on the square, which we have those 2. And then you go out to the college, which you talk about Dad. That was one thing that he commented on all the time was how much prettier the campus had gotten since Dr. Hawkins and Miss Hawkins arrived.
Oh yeah, no question.
It's just every time I would come back to Troy, they had done some project that beautified the campus.
I used to look down the hill at Sanford University, which is a beautiful place. And by the way, Troy plays Sanford in baseball tonight. How beautiful our campus is. But the idea of what has made it beautiful came from the mayor of of Andalusia, Alabama, and the mayor sort of forced, in his mind, he said, let's take down those pecan trees and let's make this parking lot that goes around the Bill Graves quad.
It was kind of controversial when they did that.
That's right, a lot of people were real upset because they knocked down those old pine trees.
That was inspired.
But you look at it now, and he personally put up $50,000 to build the fountain there, which is beautiful. And now it's a pedestrian park, and now everything they do now, and especially...
I always heard that the original, they went back to the original plans, which were designed by the architect who did Central Park.
That's right, Central Park, and same architect that did the Central Park in
New York City.
Let's take a look at this. We have over 6,000 on DVD
events,
and I was looking at some of these things here.
Prom lead out.
Yeah, prom lead out is one of the things.
Sports,
rodeo.
City council meetings.
We got a rodeo coming up, and of course, these are some of the things that we show on Troy Cable, sports and lead outs. All
the beautiful
that is
young
something that everybody
men.
don't get is the lead outs. Can you believe they already started having proms this year? And you're right.
You know, talk
over
about
6,000 DVDs. Can you believe that?
well,
many?
I read something there about the city council meetings. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a old reporter, and that's one of the topic I can
Yeah.
get on the soapbox on is that so few city council or school board meetings these days, with newspapers pretty much dying, are even covered by reporters, so the public doesn't know what their
Exactly
elected
right.
leaders are doing. But here in Troy, and you know, the meetings are covered live.
Exactly, and like the Messenger for all these years. Of course, the Messenger got it started in 1868, somewhere like that, and it's one of the oldest daily papers. But at one time, it was the only thing you could go back to in our history. You know, you could go back in the files, and they go all the way back, and you can look at these old papers. But Troy Cable is doing his own thing. Of course, we don't go back near as far as that, but it is a tool that the people 100 years from now might want to go back and say, well, let's see what happened back then, you know.
Yes,
And so hopefully and Steve, who's our director here, is very conscious of
Archiving
restoring and
everything.
keeping all the, like you said, the archives of all this. And they can remember when Bill Rice came right on this show, Bill Senior, and
I'll give
Bill
you an
Jr.
example. I was watching because our power didn't go off after the tornado, I could watch the Masters coverage, and because our church service was canceled too.
Yeah.
And I was watching some lead into the Masters, and it was showing Masters from earlier years. And the one I happened to be watching was 1960. And I thought about that. I said, well, Mom and Dad were juniors in college in 1960. Happened to be a Masters where Arnold Palmer won it.
That's right.
But the little highlight show was so fascinating, not because I could see Arnold Palmer and an amateur Jack Nicklaus. It was to see the people in the gallery, the
That's right.
patrons, and how they dressed, which was
Straw
so much
hats,
more.
straw
They
hats.
all had hats on. A lot of the men had ties on.
Yeah. Why hasn't that come back? I don't think it's ever been back since the 20s and the 30s. I mean, everybody wore a hat. The Dobbs hat was a big time hat. The Stetson hat was a big time hat. But I've always wondered why that never came back. And
And so many of the fashions do go in cycles, and you're right. But the hats have, well, now we have the baseball hat is what people wear instead of the nice
Exactly.
hat.
But, you know, like my wife says, take that hat off when we're eating dinner somewhere, you know. Hey, take your hat off when you're in the restaurant.
But then you're faced with the alternative of having unsightly hat hair.
Yeah,
so
no
what's worse,
question. No
having
question
poor
about it.
manners and wearing the hat, or letting everybody see your hat hair?
Exactly right. Of course, again, we've got a big weekend coming up. We got baseball tonight, and I think it's Dollar Night. Boy, for hot dogs, that's great, great food, and you know, a wonderful atmosphere out at the ballpark tonight. And of course, they are going up against one of the top programs in Alabama at Stanford University. So it should be a good baseball game. I want to congratulate or say something great about our good friends at Salvation Army. They were right there on the scene to provide food and for the workers and drink for the workers during the storm. They were right out there, and so Salvation Army was right there with us during this aftermath of what has been a terrible storm right here in Troy, Alabama. We hope that you've enjoyed our show today, brought to you by Dixieland Dental and some great sponsors out here. Of course, Bill Rice, I reckon you can go back, not maybe as far as your dad, but history and and what took place in Troy over the years is what I think people need to know and hear about. And leaders, you know, I would like to focus on leaders that have gone through this community, and we've had a bunch. And I went over to Wood Furniture the other day, and you know all about old Wood Furniture.
And
Alan has renovated that place, and it's going to be a wonderful place for people to have events.
Fantastic.
And of course, you know, you've known Alan for years. Y'all lived in the same neighborhood.
That's right.
I don't know if it's probably a little bit of difference in your age.
He's closer to Rush's age, but I know Alan well.
Yeah, but they all, you know, that family, and you know, it's great to have ties and to be able to look back. Of course, you know, down that hill on Murphy Street goes into an area called what you were born and raised in Hillcrest, and you were born and raised in a brick house. That meant you were rich. Is that right?
I don't know.
No, I make a joke out of that, but it was sort of true with us growing up. We always thought those folks that lived in a brick house were rich. Because the big bad wolf could not blow that house down.
I'm working on a newspaper, a journalism piece for a magazine, and it's on inflation and shrinkflation. Yeah. And I'm touching on the standard of living.
Yeah.
And I wonder if our standard of living today is even as high as it was in the past. And one point I make is that people lived pretty good. They had this domestic help, and they only had one income. It was usually just the father that worked.
Yeah. I like to go back and reminisce, and maybe tomorrow on this show I might, of course we've got Max Howell calling in tomorrow, but reminiscing on a lot of the unique things. Like they had A&P, which was the only big store they had, and you walk in and the thing you instantly smelled was the coffee. They would grind coffee there. And when you went in there, the first thing you thought about was coffee because of that wonderful aroma of coffee. You're a big coffee drinker like I am. And, that was just sort of unique. And it was just so many unique things, like going to the homemade bakery and getting fresh donuts every morning. My older brother used to, my daddy would say, run down there and get us some donuts. Or some cinnamon rolls. Well, he'd get on his bike, run down there, and be back in 10 minutes.
One of the examples I used in my article was the full-service gas station.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a dinosaur.
Papa Shorty Renfro right there on the corner.
But there were about probably 8 of them in town, and you could pull up and you get your tires checked, your oil checked, your windows washed.
That's right.
And people can't afford that now.
No, exactly. And my Uncle Shorty, of course, your dad, and my Uncle Shorty Renfro was the Guff dealer. But your daddy was had the Guff dealership,
the distributorship.
The distributorship, and they were big friends and so forth. And my uncle used to sell worms and crickets.
Yeah, I remember that.
And those type things, and then even fishing poles. They would, these cane places.
Yeah.
They would smoke.
What happened to those?
They did that with fire. They would smoke those things, and they'd be slick. That's how they had your
you would get wigglers or catawba worms.
And you could pick up your poles there too. It was really great. But those type things are things I like to talk about. There's a lot of the old things, and whether or not you live in Troy or you live in Denver, Colorado, or Spokane, Washington, or wherever you are. We're all alike, but they're unique ways from different cultures. And, like how many people did you ever know used to go to the garden with a salt shaker? You walked in the garden with a salt shaker for one main purpose. What would that be?
I don't know. Tell me.
That would be picking a tomato and putting salt on it and eating it. All right, now, how about a plum tree? Most people like those plums are about half and half. And put a little salt on it, or those green plums, and eat them raw, like that. Those were unique things that we did. Plums were big. Was plums ever big to you?
Yeah, I can
You
remember.
don't ever see a plum tree anymore.
I can remember picking a few plums in Oklahoma. I really remember picking blackberries, and Mom would make blackberry cobbler.
Yeah.
I guess people still do that, but
yeah, exactly. It's been a great show. Thank you, Bill Rice Jr.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll see you tomorrow, bright and early, for Today in LA. See us again today at 1:30.